Buenas, mi nombre es Kevin Montano y mi compañera es Kimberly Padilla y la presentación de hoy va a ser dicha en inglés. Esto es una pequeña nota antes de empezar. Bueno, today we will present the Memento design pattern I like to address in a book exercise, object-oriented programming. The main idea is to show how we can save the previous state of contact or event allowed to function similar to Control C. What's the problem? Let's suppose we have an address book and we modify a contact. We change the name, address, and relationship. Then we made a mistake. The problem is that if we don't save the previous state, there's no automatic way to revert. We will have to manually remember what data it had before. So what we need is a kind of Control Z for our objects. And now, memento pattern. What is the memento pattern? The memento pattern allows you to save and restore the internal state of an object without revealing its internal details. It has three main rules. The originator is the object that changed, for example, family contact or party event. The memento is a snapshot to save the safe state, which in our code is called memento element. And caretaker, manage the history in case change history. The important thing is that the caretaker doesn't modify or review the internal data. It only saves the memento and returns when an undo is needed.
Diagram, diagram shows how the pattern was applied to the calendar. The modified class were family contact and party event because the create memento and restore memento methods were added to them. Two new classes were also added, memento element, which saves the state adjacent text, and the object type and change history, which saves the mementos in a stack. The stack works well because the last state change should be the first to be retrieved, just like Control C. In the code, the basic flow has three steps. First, we save the state before modifying in history. Point save, CF create momentum. Here, CF point create memento takes a snapshot of the contact structure current state. That snapshot is saved in the history. Then we make the change CF point set relationship broader, and if the user wants to undo with it, CF point restore memento, history point undo, history point window returns the last saved state and restore memento applies it back to the object. In our case, we reuse export JSON which already existed, so we didn't have to the external libraries. And now, in the demo, we will see the partner working. First, we have a family contact named Carlos Mora. His initial states includes name, age, ID number, address, and relationship. Before modifying it, we save his state for save CF point create momentum, and before modifying, we save this state list. Then we make the first modification, we change the name and address. Before making a second modification, we save the stage again. Then we change the relationship to brother and the age. When we execute the first Control C, the contact reverts to the stage before the second modification, that is, it no longer appears as a brother. It reverts to being a cousin. When we execute Control C again, it returns to the original state completely. Then the same example is done with the party event. The stage is saved, the location and number of quests are changed, and when undoing, it returns to the original room with 15 quests. Trouble is like the most important partner here. History points say CF create momentum. I wouldn't yet. I am citing the previous states that's the case to memento saving before modifying. Then I make the normal change with settings, CF point set relationship brother, and and CF into set edad 36. And the undo, I use these two parts, memento elemento and history point undo. CF restore memento and undo retrieves the last saved memento from the history and restore memento copies to values back to the contact. So the object isn't replaced by another instead. The same object recovers the previous data. As
Now, after the example, we're gonna to see where else it used. Memento patterns
Many real-world applications.
in a word we use undo. In Photoshop, we use revert and previous state of canvas. In IntelliJ or Visual Studio Code, when we press Ctrl Z while programming. And also in video games, when save points are used. In all these cases, the idea is the same, to save the previous state so we can return to it later.
the partner respect encapsulation, the history doesn't need to know how a contact or event is internally structured. It's also easy to add the exciting code because we only need to add two new plays and two methods to the class that we want to restore. But there are considerations. If if these are too much states, it can consume a lot of memory. That's why history storage is usually lying in real world systems. Furthermore, objects must be able to be saved some way, for example, as JSON, internal copies, or some serializable formats.
Now the conclusions. Well, in summary, the memento patterns allows us to save a snapshot to the state before a change. The caretaker managed the history without knowing the object's internal details. And our address book, by adding memento element, change history and create memento, and restore memento, we enable contacts and events to have control C like function. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.